Konnichiwa, my fellow audience members. So, I'm here walking on my own to one of the last places I've been to. I'm gonna be working out with Andrew, but you're gonna be seeing this like on a different day. But I was watching this docu-series on Netflix called Chimp Empire, and like it was pretty cool. It was so cool. So it just got me thinking of like a lot of stuff, like how it comes to how very similar we are to chimps and just how they live. One detail that kind of stuck out to me was when it came to their living numbers and how larger groups of chimps, where they had a lot more resources and things like that, a lot more people ended up being more independent or outcasted, whilst in smaller groups, everybody had like an important role to play. Even like the woman would go to, the borders of their territory to protect their like little plot of land or whatever. And that is kind of similar with how things are in real life. I say real life, in human life, because in smaller groups, we tend to band together. We tend to see everybody as equal. And in larger groups, we kind of start to see people as nuisances. We, we don't bother to get familiar with everybody. And so it just kind of leads to a lot more isolation than it does lead to cooperation. So, so with the smaller groups, again, everybody played a role. Everybody was willing to help out anybody. When they had smaller amounts of resources, everybody went to go find resources. No man left behind type of thing. But with the larger groups, it was like they didn't care what happened to some of the other chimps if they, let's say, got lost or if they retreated or whatever the case may have been. Another thing is that when it comes to, I'd say, human civilization, since we're so disconnected from nature, like it's almost as if nature and wildlife is this completely separate thing from our own like community and society. And so I feel like that kind of leads to us feeling like we're at the top. Because like if just the average human being, even like let's say the strongest human being in the world, were to try and survive in the wildlife for like, I don't know, let me see, like without any help, without resources, they probably live for like, if they're smart, I don't know, 3 days maybe. But since we don't have any actual threats like that, we kind of see ourselves at the top, and we can kind of tend to dehumanize others around us without even realizing it or not. Like example, traffic. You're stuck in traffic. It's like, there's people, but you're just kind of like, well, these are obstacles in my head. These are obstacles in the way of me getting to work, in the way of me getting to a friend's house, in the way of me, getting home. And then the internet too, right? For one, technically we have a lot more sociability. We're a lot more connected because of the resources of the internet. But at the same time, that leads us to not even interact with the world around us, and at least in a healthy way. And so you're going to categorize and dehumanize your fellow neighbor and people on the internet, like, oh, my neighbor, she's such a Karen. My mom, she's such a Karen. Or like, oh, you're those type of people, or you're that type of person. And this is someone that, like, you've probably known for, like, your whole life, or you probably grew up in the same neighborhood as, right? Like, you probably don't even know, I don't know, you probably don't even know your neighbor from 3 doors down. Whilst, like, maybe 20 years ago, that was, like, the most normal thing. Especially if, like, everybody in the neighborhood had kids, and all the kids would play together and whatnot. So there is a bit of disconnection with the fellow neighbor when it comes to that type of stuff. Another thing, when it came to the chimp empire, it was talking about how the alpha male of the group, they will have these displays of, of dominance. So every now and then, they'll just kind of like, make a scene, make a fuss. They'll like rip up trees and uproot, plants and whatnot, just to kind of show that they still have a lot of vitality. But some chimps are able to kind of see through that and know that, hey, I bet you're getting weak, and I bet at some point I'll be able to overthrow you. And that's kind of true when it comes to just real life in general. You have that young guy, that loudmouth young guy that's like trying to make a scene, show his dominance, show everybody, how strong he is and whatnot. And then you'll have that old dude that might put him in his place. But at some point, that young guy, he's going to gain a lot more knowledge, a lot more wisdom, and be able to take the place of the older gentleman, whether he likes that or not. So it's just, very interesting, just seeing all the crazy similarities when it comes to the human race and just apes. But I guess I shouldn't be that surprised, since we're like supposedly evolved from apes. So it's like some of those primal and animalistic instincts and things like that are most likely in our biological code, our biological DNA. So those things are built into us, and we exude these things throughout many aspects of life, whether we realize it or not. Like, example, video games, right? You're playing like a simulation of these great feats, these amazing accomplishments, when in reality, you probably didn't really accomplish anything. Actually, you accomplished sitting your ass in that chair for 10 plus hours a day. That's what you accomplished. But we feel these things, and like, every time we get like a win, any type of accomplishment, we get like a boost in our testosterone, and that will incentivize us to keep going over and over, especially when it comes to the dopamine and the feelings that are released when it comes to these, high stimulant things. So that's why like something like competition is very, very important. Because it just kind of makes you feel like accomplishing something, and then you're also displaying dominance over somebody. Like, you're in a race, you're in a foot race against a friend, and you beat him. That's like a display of power, a display of dominance. Just things like that. Maybe in work, maybe you get paid more than a certain employee, or you got employee of the month. Now you're displaying your dominance over, the other employees. So, and these things are things that are displayed in animals, creatures. We're animals as well. But we can kind of forget that because we disconnect ourselves so much from our own roots, and we just kind of like don't believe that a lot of the animalistic nature that we have is something that we can disregard and forget, but we can't, because we evolved millions of years in order to get to this point. A lot of those things that are within us are things that are needed in order to survive. So a lot of traits and aspects of people that are seen as like toxic or unnecessary or horrible are usually traits that we evolved with because they were very important to our survival. So, things like aggression, being overly competitive, showing off, those were things that we needed in order to survive. Those are things that are embedded within us. And some people kind of see those traits as like toxic masculinity, especially if they, overly conflate these traits in their heads. But I don't believe there's anything such as toxic masculinity. I feel like there are weak men, and then there are strong men, whether, physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever the case may be. And I feel like you need to have all of these aspects, maxed out or close to max out in order to be, an actual man, instead of like, some guy who thinks that he's an actual man when he's really just, a little boy just in a grown man's body. And so, again, when it comes to the aspect of toxic masculinity or the concept of it, it's just kind of like trying to make male behaviors, natural male behaviors that, boys will just immediately exude once they get to a certain age. It's just trying to put down those behaviors and make them bad, which, is not a good thing, because it's just going to make boys grow up more feminine, not gay, but like, they're just, it's gonna be like they just don't have any balls, right? And that's going to make the foundation of a weak society. And when it comes to a weak society, people struggle. People are in turmoil. There's a lot of pain and suffering. And because of that, strong men will arrive from that occasion. But that can take a long, long time. And, what strong men will there be to teach the younger boys, how to actually be a strong male when they've all been eliminated, at some point. So in order to kind of defeat that, we have to, in a way, realize what it is that is making us weak. We have to realize the systems in place that are almost like castrating, our young boys and our young women, and making them forget, where we come from, and, what are the things that are actually important to us. So, yeah, you just gotta kind of learn from that. But, hey, man, shit, I don't fucking know.